This program is made possible in part by Nebraskans for Public Television. Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bales Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
The airline quality rating, it's an important thing in the airline industry, and even more so perhaps after this past year with 9/11 and trying to hope that the airline industry was able to bolster its service. And it is really important here in Nebraska because its roots are here, some of its roots. With me this week is Brent Bowen. He is the director of the Aviation Institute at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. He is also a distinguished professor here in the Institute and CPACS, as we call it, the College of Public Affairs and Community Service. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
Good. This was a big past week for you. 75 million people estimated viewed your news conference in Washington, D.C. and took your findings in their broadest strokes out to the American and world public.
It's a rather unique thing for a traditional academic research study to receive this kind of attention, and it's widespread. This year, as you mentioned, there's probably even more interest in the results, and the results were interesting.
They were. For 3 years, there was a kind of a downward trend in the kinds of things that people care about. And you use figures that the airlines have to, are required to submit, complaints, just raw numbers, delays, all those kinds of things. But we're talking about volumes and volumes and volumes of numbers. Am I correct that you sort of well, what do you crunch and put in weight with a formula? And
it actually is a rather complicated quantitative formula.
That's why we call it an academic project, right?
Right. It's calculated on a monthly basis. The data points become available every month through self-reporting by the airlines to the Department of Transportation. And we take that monthly data, apply it to our methodological formula, and generate the results monthly and put them into an average for the year to result in a ranking. That way it makes a very concise, very easy way for the consumer to distinguish which airline might be better than another.
Now, I know you haven't memorized the 10, but why don't you tell the folks so just in case they missed it this week, and you would have had to have your head in the sand. It was on every network and all the cable news networks, and you said you got a fax from, London?
From London, yes.
It was in one of the papers there?
It's really been all over. It was all of the major networks, television, radio, all the wire services. Everybody was at the National Press Club when we did this event.
Now, it's said that this is, as a media event, connected with the university system, is second only to
Husker football, I'm afraid. It's actually been estimated by a media consultant that the PR value to the University of Nebraska at Omaha exceeds $1 million a year just from this single announcement. And you can see that when you look at the widespread nature. It's estimated to be in 3,000 newspapers, and all the TV stations in virtually every major market in America carries it. So it really has become something substantial.
Well, the number one airline in overall ranking this year was actually 2001, but in your 2002 report was
Alaska Airlines.
And then I don't expect you to have memorized the rest, but I will give them. Number 2, U.S. Airways. 3, Northwest. 4, Southwest, who had a number of years had been top ranked. Number 5, Delta, who last year, 2000, was top ranked. Number 6, American, followed by America West, Continental, United, American Eagle, for the first time in these rankings, right? American
Correct.
Eagle, and number 11, TWA. these are not just airlines, they are a life necessity for a lot of our business travelers, or if you have to, your mother's ill. I mean, this is a part of commerce that we don't have a choice in. And so it's a really important part, not to mention just the raw dollars.
That's right. We had been predicting for the last several years with the decline in quality that an actual failure in the airline system could be imminent. Now, we thought over the years that failure could come from gridlock, hub lock, air traffic control systemic failure or something. We never, of course, anticipated an event like we had in September. But we knew that the industry was near a breaking point. We knew that our entire national economy is tied together by the airline industry, and that's hard for people to realize. But the financial consequences of near industry collapse was recognized after September 11th.
We saw good things. Certainly your ratings, your numbers were telling you before September of last year that things were looking up. Were you, when you started putting the numbers, which is about a 3-month lag when you get them, right?
Correct.
For the months, when you went into 2001, were you kind of a little, like, can we turn it around? Just the stuff running around in the back of your head. Brent Bowen, that loves the airline industry, loves to fly. Did you have fears maybe that they wouldn't be able to turn it around?
I did. I was very concerned when Congress failed to pass the Airline Consumers Bill of Rights. That legislation was really needed because of the continuing decline of the U.S. major airline industry. The industry banded together and proposed an alternative, a self-policing policy, so to speak, and Congress basically gave them a reprieve. And the year 2001 was part of the year to year and a half of reprieve that the airlines had. And I was actually very glad to see that the airlines did pull it off, and they did start an upward trend. There's still a long ways to go, but an upward trend was established even prior to September.
I should mention that UNO is a partner with another institution, and we just might briefly explain that. You actually started the AQR when you were
at Wichita State University. I was at the National Institute for Aviation Research as an associate director at Wichita State. And one of my colleagues in the business school, Dr. Dean Headley, had been doing service quality research in healthcare. And we talked about our interests in measuring quality in aviation, and I had already started a traditional academic study in my first year as an assistant professor on gathering data to measure airline quality. Dr. Headley, being an expert in research methodologies, was very excited about this approach, and we decided to work collaboratively together to put out the first rating.
That's
12 years ago.
12 years ago.
12 years ago.
So then when UNO lured you here, they were able to then to garner half of the authorship, the official authorship of this, even though it was kind of your baby to begin with. But I'm sure the university is grateful that 75 million people see their name.
Well, it's worked well, and it has stood a test of time over a decade now. And being non-subjective and non-opinion based, it really is beyond any criticism because the numbers are publicly available to anyone. We know several of the airlines actually gather this data,
crunch their own numbers
to keep us all honest and to monitor their competitive position. And that, I think, is a good outcome of what we do.
Oh, absolutely. So you have, this is your 12th year, when your first report and second report, let's say the first couple of 2 or 3 years came out, how did, as the researcher that crunched all these numbers and looked at it, and then you're sort of, you who love the industry, and you know, and try not to be biased, look at these numbers which speak for themselves. Where did you feel then that the airline industry needed to go, and where the potential problems were, and did they develop perhaps as you saw them, or might have in your mind projected them?
They did develop through the auspices of our academic study. We started actually with a set of 80 potential factors to evaluate the airline industry on, and we pared that back to 19 originally. We used those 19 factors until just 14, until about 4 years ago, and we're down to 14 factors now. But really, there's been a development period. Part of that's been developed through the attention that we've received in the media.
But when you were in the infancy of this rating, did you see in your mind, you can't really see a trend in 2 or 3 years as much as deeper trend, but with your knowledge of the industry, and you are really tight with a lot of folks in the industry, and these numbers in your hand, did you see that the airline industry was headed for gridlock and some of the competition kinds of problems they had, or lack thereof, depending on, did you see it developing as it sort of did the last several years?
We really did. We saw it through the evolution of the rating as a benchmark. After we had 3 years worth of data, we could start seeing trends, and we could do trend analysis. And we saw that the industry was not improving. For a while it was rather stagnant, and then it started its decline, and we've been watching that decline for 5 years now. So it really is good that we've started an upward trend. We're not up to where it should be, but we've reversed the negative course.
Now, last year you're plotting, and you must have gotten, just personally knowing you and your excitement about the industry, as you plotted January and February and March, and you saw it starting to go up, you had to have been excited. But when September 11th came, besides the just incredible tragedy and feelings that we all had, you had to be thinking about that airline industry and just, what was this all going to mean? How's it going to pan out?
Well, we did, and in September we only had data through about the first half of the year, and there was some consideration as to whether or not to announce the airline quality rating this year. Of course,
have
the news conference, invite the media, because we did not want to beat on an industry if that was having problems brought upon it by external tragic influences.
You would have released the information, just not kind of made a big do about it.
Exactly. We would have published the data just to keep the airline quality rating going. But when it became evident that the news was good, and the news even prior to September of the increased results by the airlines showed that they were making a turnaround, we felt like that should be a story that is told.
And then after September 11th, now you only got, as I recall, from September, the government only required and then released the first 10 days of September.
That's
and then
correct.
they resumed, and everybody had their hands full that was connected with that. And it would have been a false, because airports were closed and flights were getting back to normal and airspace was being monitored. Then you had October, November, December, and those continued that trend even after all that.
It did. There were some influences and some results of September 11th that probably influenced the positive nature of the results, because when you don't have as many flights, you can have better on-time performance. When you don't have as many passengers, you can do a better job with baggage. And actually, the postal problems last fall probably affected the number of customer complaints received by the Department of Transportation in the last quarter of the year. So that's why it's good to focus on the results from January through September 10th.
Mm-hmm. Eventually, the American public, being what who they are, Yes, people have cut back on flights. Even businesses have learned maybe they can do more teleconferencing. Things will, because of 9/11 and other factors and cutting back on flights and the financial problems that that were already in progress in the pipeline before 9/11, which became exacerbated to the point where we all know, we heard, help us out, Congress, blah. There will be more planes in the sky, and it will get even more crowded. And the air traffic control system, which is already, I think, living on borrowed time, but I'm no expert. What do you see happening?
Well, we're at a very interesting juncture. Because of the tragedy, we're in a downward trend in the industry right now in terms of growth. However, we've seen that growth in all the technologies you mentioned. All they do is increase the demand for travel. People learn more, they want to go, they want to do more. So analysts have already determined that growth will continue, and growth will begin within the next 1.5 to 3 years on a substantial basis. Now, the interesting point that we have before us is we've almost, you could look at it as having a reprieve. We have a reprieve.
Some more borrowed time.
We have some borrowed time to solve some of the problems that we were facing on September 10th. Gridlock, air traffic control modernization, airport expansion. And I think if we are not facing a challenge right now, it's that. We are not facing up to that challenge during this time of reprieve, and we should. We should encourage our leaders to look at this opportunity and start taking real and substantial action on these problem areas.
We've known for some time before 9/11 that there were, I don't know if everyone knew it quantitatively, but they knew it sort of some quantitative, some intuitive, that we had problems with our security. That, things could happen. People were piping up and saying, after the hijackings and the bombings of and I can never remember the flights, TWA, Lockerbie, and the one that they worried about was a bomb off the coast of New York, but didn't turn out to be. There were blue ribbon panels and all kinds of things saying we need to, and we didn't do all the things we could have. So now we have an air traffic control system, and in other words, we've had notice, in a sense, on these, but being human beings, and having other things to worry about, like Israel and the Palestinians, and whatever the crisis du jour, de month is, that this might not move as quickly as it should with this extra kind of time.
Exactly.
What should happen here?
Well, we identified in the Aviation Institute a couple of years ago that there were issues within airport security that needed to be addressed. We developed courses on airport security. We started engaging in research activities and educational activities in airport security, terrorism, and things like that, because we had seen, as you mentioned, presidential commission reports, blue ribbon panels, saying something has to be done, something has to be done. The NTSB even said things had to be done, but no action would be taken. No one wanted to pay for security, and that's why nothing happened. There was no willingness to pay for added security in our completely deregulated airline environment. So an outcome of September 11th is now the American people, through Congress, have said we are willing to pay for added security, and that's why we're seeing action now.
But it may not be in order to act ahead. People are worried about their taxes. We just, we're having a tax increase in Nebraska, so it seems, overriding governor's vetoes and all kinds. And like I said, there's these international problems that are flaring up. We seem to be reactive, and are we going to wait 3 years until the number of flights is back up and the whole computer system for the FAA goes? What's it going to take? Are you folks in the academic and world and the airlines world going to put together a plan to demonstrate to the American people who the congressmen and women are responsible to, that this also is just as important. This is the next. This is the other jet engine that's going to, help keep both those sides of the plane working right.
Well, I think actually the responsibility for this lies within the Federal Aviation Administration, and they have not exercised that responsibility to the level that they have needed to. I actually do not think that these problems will be resolved without direct congressional action. I see no evidence that we're making any movement towards solving any of the problems that we were nearly at in terms of potential systemic failure prior to September 11th.
We've got important government contacts with Lockheed to build more drones and national defense. We can, if we didn't see it before, individuals didn't see it before, they certainly do see the need for certain post 9/11 certain aspects of funding and initiatives that need to be done. The initiative of handling the air traffic system, it's one of the most antiquated systems in the U.S. government, isn't it?
It really is. The technology is way behind. I've observed air traffic control systems in Eastern Europe that were more modern than in the United States. So
by Eastern Europe, you're talking about some of those are the old communist bloc countries.
Exactly. And I just do not buy that the government cannot purchase and deploy technology. And there's a lot of sentiment that the FAA says, well, the government bureaucracy to purchase a system is too great and we can't do it, we can't work with it, we have to privatize. I don't buy that. I think if we wanted to make an effort to modernize the system and had the wherewithal to do it and the leadership, it could be done.
Let's jump back to UNO here for a second. You've put together an aviation institute with the help of some good people that you have working for you. How important is the Aviation Institute to Omaha? We are not a hub. We have a darn good airport. Lincoln has a good airport. So this area of the state is populated enough to have good airfields. How important is it to have an aviation program?
Actually there are not that many similar programs in the country. And certainly we have the most substantial program between St. Louis and Denver. And because of that, we serve a huge region. We have actually a large aviation industry in the state of Nebraska. And we need to be providing educational activities and programs for the state of Nebraska because of that. And in result, we also provide it on a regional basis. I think it's a very nice distinction that was identified by some of the community leaders here in Omaha 12 to 13 years ago that said, Nebraska and Omaha needs an aviation education program at the college level. And it's probably been one of the more interesting developments of a program in direct response to a call from the local community that I've ever seen anywhere.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not an expert on your department. You're the expert. But as I understand it, people say, well, what do you go to the Aviation Institute? Just to learn to fly? No, there's a lot more to it. Airline management, airport management. Management is a key factor in your program, is it not?
It really is. When we joined the College of Public Affairs and Community Service about 7 years ago, we decided as an institute that we really wanted to focus in the public sector side of management or administration. And that's how we have now evolved into an institute within the School of Public Administration within the CPACS College. And because of that, we do focus on the airport environment. Now that includes the business firms at the airport, the airlines, airport management, and air traffic control. So we focus on the airport environment. And there's a lot of job activity, a lot of career activity at that level. And we've actually identified a very nationally unique niche on the aviation administration side.
Now it's kind of interesting. We're not a hub; you wouldn't expect it, but we are, as I said, have good air service, particularly in Omaha for a city its size. Across the river, over at Iowa Western Community College, there's another sort of part of airline training. It's mechanical, the electronic. It seems to me Omaha's pretty lucky, and Nebraska's pretty lucky to be able to keep people here that are interested in these industries.
Well, you're absolutely right. Omaha actually has better than good service. We have excellent service. We probably have better airline service than we deserve as a community of
Per
our
capita.
size. And I have to attribute the leadership of our airport, Don Smithy, the executive director of our airport authority, and our very aggressive airport authority in pursuing new airlines, new businesses for our aviation community. That has been key. And it is very complimentary to have a program like ours in aviation administration and aviation flight complemented with the aviation maintenance technology program at Iowa Western. As a matter of fact, they're in the process of expanding that program, and we are working with them to help them with their program expansion as a direct feeder into the UNO Aviation Institute.
We have about a minute left. Your predictions on the airline industry, just a couple of bullet points. Good things to worry about for the next year or so.
There will be airlines to fail, and we should let them fail. We should stop the large mergers, the combining of poorly run organizations. We should let some fail and let the better managed airlines pick up the pieces, or let some new airlines emerge.
What about competition then? That's the other thing that consumers worry about then.
I think that we will have better competition if we let the healthy airlines survive and prosper and not try to piece together some of the broken ones.
And will those healthy airlines or these surviving airlines have learned from the public's cry for better service?
I think they are being more responsive to the public outcry for service. I think we'll see more attention given to customer service, and the airlines want to stay away from government regulation.
Hey, you want to find out more about the airline quality ranking? Go to unomaha.edu. Site search Aviation Institute. You can catch up on the Institute itself and the latest AQR for 2002. Thanks, Brent Bowen, for being with us today. And thank you for joining us this week on Consider This. And of course, you can see the show on unotv.unomaha.edu, just in case you miss it sometime. Have a good day.
This program is made possible in part by Nebraskans for Public Television.